What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be going over some different releases that all wide receivers need to know that DBs cannot guard if wide receivers do them properly. So we're going to break down the technique, the exact situations you guys want to use these releases, the names of these press releases, and how you guys can remember them. So I hope this video gives you guys a ton of value. Hope you learn a few new things from this, but also, fellas, if you're a receiver and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are coming out to 15 different cities across the U.S. for 2-day long QB and wide receiver camps. So check out that very first link in the description below. That's so you can get all the information, what we'll be doing at the camps, and how you guys can sign up. Our first camp stop is going to be in San Francisco, California, and then Miami, Florida next. Both of those camps are completely sold out. But then we'll be coming out to Las Vegas, Nevada, Charlotte, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, Illinois, Buffalo, New York, Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, Boise, Idaho, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys like to train with us in any one of those locations, we'd love to have you there, fellas. So check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started with this video. All right, guys, so this first release that I want to talk about here is something called a burst release. So this is a great example here of this burst release from Sterling Shepard. So this is a release that you want to use when you have a DB who's lined up inside shade and he's maybe about 2 to 3 yards away from you, and you have to close the distance, almost trying to step on his toes to create some more space for you to the outside. So he's using this on a goal line fade, but you can honestly use this on any type of outside release. So you could use this on a fade, you could use this on an out route, you could use it on a corner route, you could even use it when you take an outside release and have to run an inside breaking route like a post. So let's show this full speed and then we'll break down the technique of this release. So this is obviously a very explosive release here from Sterling Shepard, and he gets a ton of explosion off the line from this move that I call a power step from this back foot. Or some people could call this like a jab step, if you will, but essentially what you're doing is you were just taking this back foot in your stance and jabbing to the outside. Now, the reason why you were doing this is this creates some explosion. Some of you might be familiar with something we've talked about called a kick step before. Like, let's say this DB was lined up straight in front of us. You take your back foot and you kick it behind your front foot, and then you throw like a jab to the outside. This is essentially what this is, but it helps him gain some ground, right? So let me backtrack a second here. So anytime that we have this inside shade look, and this DB's 2 to 3 yards off, we have to try to close that 2 to 3 yards worth of space. Is Sterling Shepard before this goal line fade just gave like a little jab or a little crossover to the inside, but kept this amount of space? When he tries to go back to the back pylon, this DB could cut off the angle because there's too much of a gap between us. So what we have to do is we have to close the space. We have to eat up his cushion. But I want to do it quickly, especially when we're in the red zone and the quarterback doesn't have a ton of time. So this punch step, or this prep step, if you will, this back foot, it creates some explosion, but it allows him to push off of this back foot and burst off of the line, hence the name burst release. Some people refer to this as like a squirt release, I guess you could say, because you're just bursting out to the DB, if you will. I personally don't like that name, but a burst release is what I would call this because of what that back foot does. So you punch at the back foot, you push off the back foot, you close the space with the DB. Now we can work some type of crossover, some type of move, whatever the case may be. So he pushes off this back foot, bursts, closes the distance, and then throws this crossover to the inside. Now, obviously, when we have a DB on the goal line, we know that he's not going to do what? He's not going to backpedal, right? So it's super important to close the space with him because he can't inch back. He can't motor back. And that's what DBs are taught to do in open space, right? Because when we're in open space and let's say we see this look and this DB's got 2 to 3 yards of space, he's taught to keep that space. So if he's playing you like this and you're in the open field and you attack him, that DB might start to inch back and try to maintain that gap. Goal line, he can't do that because he cannot give up the inside on a slant, on a drag, whatever it is. So when we close that space with him, make sure that you leave maybe about, I don't know, I'd say about a half a yard of space just so he can't get hands, because that's what he's going to obviously try to do. And then it just comes down to selling it. This DB's going to try to stay disciplined. He's going to try to keep our eyes on our hips. So we have to think your hips, your shoulders, you're selling the inside route like a slant, and that gives you more space to the outside. So that is a textbook burst release there from Sterling Shepard. Make sure we take that punch step. Make sure when that punch step hits, it's quick, it's violent. We push off of it because that allows us to explode off the ball and close space with the DB. So let's play it full speed one more time. Great job by Shepard working that move and then running out to that back pylon to win on the fade. Okay, so now this next release here is a very, very explosive release from Garrett Wilson. Like, honestly, guys, like, I think if Garrett Wilson had more targets, more opportunities, he would be a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL right now. Like, that's how good I think this guy is, and I think his route running is Probably some of the best in the NFL. I just don't think he gets the opportunities to showcase it like guys like Davante Adams, Justin Jefferson. I'd put him right up there. And this is a great example of that. So you have a DB who's lined up inside shade again, kind of in that same catch technique look, right? Where there's like maybe 2 yards of space, maybe 3 yards of space, right? His goal is to prevent anything inside breaking, force everything to the outside where he has help, which is AKA the sideline. He wants him to run out of bounds. Now, the positive thing, Garrett Wilson's going to be running a slant. I love this release called a diamond release, only when you have to run a slant versus an inside shade press guy. Now, after we do this release, we're going to show a different version of a slant route versus inside shade press, because this is not the only way to do it. We're going to show how Stefon Diggs will run that inside route like a slant versus inside shade press. We're going to show this one first because I think this is one you have to get down first before you do the more advanced stuff. So we have inside shade press. Like we said, goal is prevent inside, force us outside. Good news is it's still man-to-man coverage. So anybody in man-to-man coverage, especially when you're facing a fast receiver, does not want to get beat deep. So we have to use that to our advantage. So what Wilson does here, he comes out the ball, gives a little move, 3 hard steps at this DB's outside shoulder to get him to open up his hips, aka open up the gate, and he uses this great throw-by move. This is not a flag. This is within 5 yards. This would be considered wide receiver and DB hand fighting. So you're not going to get a flag for this. This is not a push-off. So let's go back to the top. Now, could Garrett Wilson have just taken off and gone 3 steps right away out of his stance? Absolutely. But because there is some distance with him in this DB, if he were to do that and take off, there would be a big gap of space. And when there's that gap of space, you can't do what with this inside hand? You can't throw him by. You can't get hands on the back of his shoulder, back of his hip to throw him off or to throw him off so you could slip under. So what we have to do is we have to close space first. Anytime that you get a DB who's 2 to 3 yards away, we have to close space. So he closes space and then he attacks. That's the first step of the diamond. The diamond release is only 3 steps because a slant is usually not deeper than 3 steps, right? So we have to stay on that timing with my quarterback. So he goes 1, second step, 2, breaks on the 3rd, right? And you see when he hits that 2nd and 3rd step, he starts to put that hand on the DB. Last second, he swats him by the back of his elbow. We call that a point of control. There are 3 points of control on a DB: elbow, shoulder, and hip. If you could hit one of those points of control, you'll be able to get separation on a move like this. Now, again, why is this a move that you want to use on a slant versus inside shade? Because like we said, this DB's inside shade to prevent the inside route. So if your game plan, like that burst release that we just showed where he took a punch step and he attacked him, if your goal on this is to do like a burst release and square up the DB, give a fake outside, and then cut in front of his face, the second you do that burst release and attack him, what's this DB going to do? He's going to take something called a leverage step, and he's going to protect his leverage. He's going to keep the inside shade no matter what you do off the line. So there's no point in doing that. If we do that burst release inside and then try to force it, he's going to get hands, he's going to be right on us, and my slant route, instead of being here, is going to be like an inside stem slant route running into linebackers, running into other receivers, and the spacing's off. And if this DB gets hands on us, the timing's going to be off. So let's attack his outside shoulder. Let's try to make him think we're running a fade and open up, so now I could slip under, I keep spacing, and I'm still on time. So let's play this thing full speed one more time. That's a textbook diamond release there from Garrett Wilson, and a great job finishing that catch. Okay, so now, like we said, Stefon Diggs is a little bit more advanced version. I wouldn't necessarily call it an advanced version of a slide release or of a diamond release. It's more like a slide release to the outside. So you see how we have an inside shade guy. It's kind of the same concept, if you will, just a slower tempo as the diamond release. So let's watch what he does. So he comes off the ball, he does his little like skip, crossover, gets the DB to open up, and then he wins on that slant. So there are a couple things that this builds off of, and that's what I want to talk about. So you got a DB who's inside shade, right? His goal, like we talked about in the last clip, don't let a receiver run to the inside. So it's kind of a problem, right? Sometimes when I have to run an inside route like a slant and he's sitting inside shade right at the depth of the slant, I got to make sure that I attack his outside shoulder and outside hip. Now, on the diamond release, what were we trying to make the DB think that we were doing? Trying to make him think we're running a fade. We're attacking his outside shoulder. I'm running hard, running in full stride. I want him to open up so I could slip back under him. But now there are other ways to self-fade than just running hard. There are sometimes releases that you could pair together that make your routes look like a fade. So how many times have you seen guys like Stefon Diggs, mainly guys like Davante Adams, Justin Jefferson, they come off the ball, they have inside shade press, and they do this little like slide, kind of slower pace skip, and then they just take off and go. They slide and then go. And that DB sits to the inside because he's expecting a slant, but then they beat him on a fade. So now that gets in the DB's head a little bit. He starts thinking. Next time he sees that slide, he might be a little over anxious to go. So that's essentially what Diggs does here. So you see how he comes off the ball. He takes this little prep step with his front foot. He pushes off the front foot, and it's almost a shuffle. I tell my wide receivers that you want to think of it like just a shuffle, and your feet are trying to stay as close to the grass as you can. It's like a slide of your feet. So now when we slide, and now we're attacking the outside shoulder, outside hip. We're not forcing the inside release getting rerouted. Diggs throws a great kind of like crossover fake to the outside, hips, shoulders. He quickens up the tempo on the crossover, so it looks a lot like that slide and go release from a wide receiver. And that can sometimes get this DB over anxious. He jumps. Now all of a sudden I got spacing on the route and I kept timing. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, coach, my receiver coach hates when I do stuff like this because it takes too long. And he thinks that I'm going to screw up timing with the quarterback. The quarterback's going to be ready to throw, and I'm not going to be out of the break. So you have to use this wisely. So what I recommend is probably a situation where it's like an RPO. I hope at least a good amount of you know what an RPO is, but that's a run-pass option, right? So if I got my quarterback, let's say my quarterback is like, I'm going to drop a play here. So let's say the quarterback's here. Let's say you're here. You have to run a slant. Quarterback has the running back here. He's doing a zone read fake. They're reading a linebacker. Linebacker crashes on the zone read. He throws the slant. But he's doing a zone read fake, right? So if he's doing that zone read fake, it takes a little bit longer. So maybe we slow down my release a little bit. I don't want to be too fast and get to the window too early to when the quarterback is not ready to throw it yet and I'm already there, and that allows the DB to recover, or maybe even a linebacker to recover because I got there too fast. So you have to understand timing of plays with these a little bit more slower paced releases, I guess you can say. You still want to move fast. You still want to be sudden. You still want to have some twitch, but you got to know the right situation to slow things down. Okay, so now next example here is going to be from Keenan Allen, and this is a great like kind of hesitation, I guess you could say skip release. It's very, very similar to what we just talked about with that slide, but the only difference is this is more like off coverage. So this is a situation where you have a DB who's maybe 5 yards away and you got to go run a fade route, right? So if he's inside shade, you have to run a fade. What do you got to do? Our goal is to get him to hold his leverage inside so I have more space to the outside and the quarterback could fade me over the shoulder, right? So what Allen does is he does this little like hesitation skip move, and we're going to talk about it. So he comes off, gives a little 1-2, gets the DB to sit, makes it look like he's running some type of inside route, and you see how he's able to win on the fade. So let's talk about it. So anytime that you're doing like everybody talks a lot about like, oh, I want to do a hesitation skip, I want to do a hesitation move, but I don't think they necessarily know what the mechanics are of it. When you do like a hesitation move, it's not just slowing down. It's not just like skipping your feet. A way I think of it is like you're taking a double step with whatever foot you're trying to like hesitate on, if that makes sense, right? So we're trying to make this DB think I'm running an inside route. So he's going to hesitate with his inside foot. So watch what he does here. You see how he steps with the right foot and he takes 2 steps with his right foot before he takes off and goes. So he steps again. I'll show slow-mo. He steps with the left, right foot, take off. And that double step right there is the change in tempo. He's not slowing himself down. He's slowing the tempo, I guess you could say, of the route down by taking 2 steps with the same foot. So he goes right, then he takes off. Some guys might want to do this and they step with their left foot twice. And then maybe that DB jumps and they cut back underneath, whatever the case may be, right? You could hesitate on whatever foot. But I like it when the DB's inside shade, you want to hesitate with the foot closest to him on this type of route. So again, maybe Allen a couple times has come off the ball. He's done this little hesitation step, and then he throws a crossover and runs an inside route. DB's maybe seen it before. Maybe he's seen it on film. So he's pairing his releases and pairing his routes together. So anytime that you guys throw this type of move, it's a great way to get this DB to stop himself. Great way to get him to stay to his leverage because he's expecting an inside move because this does change the route tempo down, and that could help him expect a route. So that's a textbook hesitation skip there from Allen. That's a great job getting separation on that fade.